Okay, number 26. The term anaerobic means blank. Okay, again, aerobic is that means that requires oxygen. So it has a prefix "an" which is a negation. So that means anaerobic means without oxygen or does not require oxygen. 27. Glycolysis is a process found in blank. Okay, is it A, eukaryotic cells, B, most muscle cells, C, anaerobic bacteria, or D, virtually all cells? So, is it just in eukaryotic cells lang ba? Sa muscle cells lang ba? Or si anaerobic bacteria lang ba ang gumagamit ng glycolysis na process or lahat ng cells? So, ang answer dito is letter D, virtually all cells. Even though yung mga anaerobic bacteria does not have a mitochondrion, which is a membrane-bound organelle, nangyayari pa rin yung glycolysis in their cells. It's because glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm, not in the mitochondria. And also, glycolysis is a universal pathway of all cells. 28. How many molecules of oxygen gas are used during the glycolysis of one molecule? Is it A0, B16, C1, D38? Now remember again that the final electron acceptor in the cellular respiration is oxygen to form water. And now, oxygen will be used in the electron transport chain or the oxidative phosphorylation. So, walang oxygen na gagamitin in the other process of cellular respiration. So, yung answer natin dito is letter A, 0. 29. During glycolysis, glucose split into A, 2-pyruvic acid molecule, B, 2-lactic acids molecule, C, 1-lactic acid plus 1 ethanol molecule, or D, 2 coenzyme A molecules. Now, if we go back to the process of glycolysis, the products of glycolysis are 2 pyruvates, 2 NADH, and 2 ATP. Now, these 2 pyruvates are also known as pyruvic acid. So our answer here, is letter A, 2 pyruvic acid molecules. So from glucose, it will be split into 2 pyruvic acid molecule during glycolysis. Number 30. Which of the following processes releases a carbon dioxide molecule? Is it A, glycolysis, B, alcoholic fermentation, C, lactic acid fermentation, or D, hydrolysis of glycogen? Now remember that its cellular respiration also produces carbon dioxide. To be specific, in the stages of Krebs cycle and the I forgot the other stage. But during glycolysis, there will be no production of carbon dioxide. So, X na yung letter A natin. It's either B, C, or D. In hydrolysis of glycogen, when we say hydrolysis, guys, is the splitting of hydrogen or the oxidation of glycogen or of glycogen. So it's wrong pa rin. It's either in the two, the alcoholic or the lactic acid fermentations. Ano ba yung fermentation? Okay, fermentation is basically an anaerobic production of ATP. When we say anaerobic, again, it does not require oxygen for that process to happen. So cells that undergo fermentation are some bacteria, archaea, yeast, and muscle cells of animals. So there are two types of fermentation, the lactic acid fermentation and the alcoholic or the ethanol fermentation. Now let's talk about first the alcoholic or the ethanol fermentation. What happens during this process. So we have here our diagram. Okay, so nag-undergo yung cell ng glycolysis in the cytoplasm. Okay, glycolysis happens in the cytoplasm. Now, glycolysis splits this one molecule of glucose into two pyruvates or pyruvic acid. In that process, mayroong marirelease na 2 ATP. Okay? So, after na ma-split ang glucose into two pyruvates or 2 pyruvic acid, it will then be converted again into 2 acetaldehyde. So, in this process, it will produce 2 molecules of carbon dioxide. Now, bakit siya tinawag na alcoholic fermentation? Because ang product ng process na to is ethanol. Okay? Ethanol yung product ng process na to. Now, look here in the chemical composition of the acetaldehyde. It has two atoms of carbon, 4 atoms of hydrogen, and 1 atom of oxygen. Now, in here in the ethanol, it has now 2 atoms of carbon and 6 atoms of hydrogen and 1 atom of oxygen. Now, saan galing yung dalawang atoms ng hydrogen? It was coming from the NADH, no? So, yung NADH, inirelease na yung electron ng hydrogen, no? Inad niya dito sa acetaldehyde. And then naging ethanol na yung acetaldehyde. And then yung NADH is bumalik na siya sa kanyang primary form, which is the NADPH. So it's a cycle. So that's what happens during alcoholic fermentation. So alam na natin kung ano yung answer sa ating question. Because in this process, mayroong na-produce na carbon dioxide. Now before we go to our question, let's talk also first about lactic acid fermentation. The same lang din yung process in the cytoplasm. Mag-undergo na glycolysis, so the glucose will be split into 2 pyruvates. Pero itong 2 pyruvates hindi na siya maka-convert into 2 acetaldehyde. It will then be converted directly into a lactate. Okay, again, yung dalawang hydrogen dito na na-add from the 2 pyruvates is coming from the 2 NADH. So, it's a cycle. So, yung mga anaerobic bacteria and other animal cells, like for example, our muscle cells, while we are jogging or doing hard work, pag masyadong maliit na yung oxygen na ating ini-intake at hindi na kayang mag-undergo ng cellular respiration yung muscles natin, ginagamit nila yung lactic acid fermentation. Now, pag tumaas ang level ng lactate sa ating muscles, ang mangyayari sa ating muscles ay magka-cramp or mabikugan ta. Okay? So, kanang mabikugan ta while doing something or doing hard work, the result of that is tumaas yung level ng lactic acid sa ating muscle cells. Kaya, nagka-cramp yung muscle cells natin. Okay? So, again, the process that produces carbon dioxide molecule in our choices is alcoholic fermentation. Okay? Number 31. In a eukaryotic cell, glycolysis takes place. Again, saan nga mangyayari yung glycolysis? In the cytoplasm. Okay? In the cytoplasm but outside the organelles. Even though the other stages of cellular respiration, the Krebs cycle, and the ETC happens inside the mitochondria, but the mitochondria is suspended in the cytoplasm. Pero hindi siya nangyayari sa cytoplasm. Nangyayari lang siya doon sa loob ng mitochondria. So, yung glycolysis lang happens in the cytoplasm. 32. In the electron transport system, the final acceptor of electron is, again, diniscuss ko na to kanina, the final electron acceptor in the ETC or the oxidative phosphorylation is oxygen to form water. 33. An autotroph is an organism that A. requires no input of materials from its environment, B. sustains itself without eating other organisms, C. sustains itself without aerobic respiration, or D. within the mitochondria. Now again, if you know what is an autotroph, you can answer directly this question. So what is an autotroph, by the way? An autotroph is also known as producers. Example of this are plants, bacteria, some bacteria, and algae. Okay? So autotrophs can sustain itself without eating other organisms. Kaya nga tinatawag silang producers and not consumers. Okay? They are producers and not consumers. It's because they can sustain itself without eating other organisms. Okay. Number 34. An autotroph gets its carbon from blank. Again, saan naginukuha ng plants ng ang kanilang carbon? It's from carbon dioxide. Even though methane has a carbon atom, pero yung primary source ng carbon dioxide ng plants is, yung primary source ng carbon ng mga autotrophs is the carbon dioxide. Okay, number 35. Photosynthetic autotrophs get their energy from, alam nyo na to, photosynthetic meaning light synthetic. Synthesis using light energy. Okay. 36. Which of the following light color works least for photosynthesis? Saan dito yung hindi masyadong ginagamit in the photosynthesis? So our answer here is color green. Why? Because the reason why we see most of the plants are color green, it's because they reflect the light color green because they don't usually need it. Kaya nire-reflect lang nila, hindi nila ina-absorb because they don't need it. Okay? Number 37. In a plant cell, which of the following pigments participates directly in the light reactions of photosynthesis? A. Chlorophyll A, B. Chlorophyll D, C. Chlorophyll B, D. Carotenoids. Now, ano ba itong mga chlorophyll na to? So let's talk about this. So there are many chlorophyll pigments in the plants, but there are two main types of chlorophyll. So we will just talk about chlorophyll A and chlorophyll D for now. So ano ba yung chlorophyll A? So chlorophyll A is the primary pigment of the photosynthesis. It is necessary for photosynthesis to occur. So, lahat ng photosynthetic ng organisms, they contain chlorophyll A. So, it absorbs light from the orange, red, and violet blue areas of the electromagnetic spectrum. It also transfers energy to the reaction center and donates 2 excited electrons to the ETC. In the cellular respiration, meron ding electron transport chain. Sa photosynthesis din, meron ding electron transport chain. So, electron transport chain happens during the light reactions of photosynthesis. How about chlorophyll B? It is an accessory pigment of photosynthesis. Not all organisms that photosynthesize have chlorophyll B. So, hindi siya masyadong needed ng lahat ng plants or photosynthetic organisms except for those organisms na hindi sila masyadong nakakatanggap ng sunlight. So, yung mga organisms na for example, yung sa forest, yung mga grass sa sa ubos na sa mga kahoy, meaning they don't get sunlight is because yung sunlight is makukuha ng mga taller plants. So yung mga shorter plants, ang mas maraming pigment sa kanila or chlorophyll sa kanila is yung chlorophyll B. Okay? Because chlorophyll B absorbs blue light, in which yung blue light is napakaraming energy na na-contain. So even though gamay lang nilang makuha na light, but it's a blue light naman, okay lang din. So, plants that receive less sunlight have more chlorophyll B in their chloroplast. Okay? So, in our question here, in a plant cell, which of the following pigments participates directly in the light reactions of photosynthesis? Now, if we go back to chlorophyll A transfers energy to the reaction center and donates 2 excited electrons to the electron transport chain. So again, electron transport chain in photosynthesis happens during the light reactions. So our answer to our question is chlorophyll A, because chlorophyll A has a direct role in the light reactions of photosynthesis. 38. The pigment molecules of a chloroplast are located. Is it A, within its thylakoid membranes, B, within its intrathylakoid spaces, C, within its inner membranes, D, within the space between its inner and outer membranes? So yung pigments, guys, is located within its thylakoid membranes. Yung chlorophyll is makikita sa thylakoid membranes ng chloroplast. Now remember that light reactions happens in the thylakoid membranes because yung mga pigments na yon na nakikita sa thylakoid membranes, sila yung nagka-capture ng energy from the sun. So our answer here is letter A. 39. In a plant cell, the dark reaction of photosynthesis take place in the blank. So, saan dito? So, basically, nangyayari ang photosynthesis in the chloroplast. To be specific, in the stroma yung dark reaction na stage ng photosynthesis. Okay, again, yung photosynthesis nangyayari sa chloroplast ng plant cell. And your dark reaction ng photosynthesis is nangyayari in the stroma of the chloroplast. That is the specific location in which the dark reaction happens, while the light reactions happens in the thylakoid membranes. 40. Okay, we have here the thylakoid. Yung stack ng thylakoid, yung nakapile na thylakoid, ang tawag dyan is the granum or the grana pag marami. And then the stroma, ito yung stroma, it is where the dark reaction of photosynthesis takes place. 40. The red, orange, and yellow colors of autumn leaves are caused by light reflected from blank. A. Chlorophyll A, B. Chlorophyll D, C. Chlorophyll B, D. Carotenoids. Now, our answer here is letter D, carotenoids. That is why meron tayong vegetable na carrots ang tawag. It's because it contains carotenoids. That is why ma-observe natin na there are carrots na medyo reddish siya, medyo orange din siya, and meron ding iba na parang yellowish siya. It's because carotenoids reflect these colors. Okay? 41. Which of the following colors of light works best for photosynthesis? Kanina, yung color of light na nag-work least or hindi masyadong ginagamit ng plants is color green. Now, this question is asking, ano yung nag-work best for photosynthesis? Yung nag-work best sa photosynthesis is yung color blue and color red na light. It's because it contains much energy from than the green light. Okay? 42. How many carbon atoms are there in a molecule glyceraldehyde phosphate? A2, B4, C3, D6. Now, ano ba yung glyceraldehyde phosphate? Glyceraldehyde phosphate or glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate is also known as phosphoglyceraldehyde. It is the product of the Calvin cycle or the dark reactions of photosynthesis. It is a 3-carbon sugar that is the starting point for the synthesis of other carbohydrates such as glucose is 6-carbon sugar. So, yung glyceraldehyde phosphate contains 3 carbon atoms. Our answer here is letter C, 3 carbon. The molecule in the Calvin cycle that combines with carbon dioxide is blank. Is it A, glyceraldehyde phosphate, B, ribulose biphosphate, C, posphenol pyruvic acid, or D, citric acid? Now, before we answer this question, let us talk first shortly about photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is the conversion of light energy into chemical energy in the form of glucose or sugar. So, in plants, it happens in the chloroplast, which contains a chlorophyll, which is a molecule or a pigment in the chloroplast. So, in photosynthesis, meron tayong 2 stages, which is the light-dependent phase or the light reaction, and also the light-independent phase or the dark reactions or the Calvin cycle. So, again, the light-dependent phase or the light reaction happens in the thylakoids or in the granum, yung stacks ng thylakoids. So, yung material na needed during the light reaction is water and light. So, during the light reactions, dito mangyayari yung photolysis of water na kung saan binibreakdown ng sunlight, kaya tinatawag siyang photolysis because it uses the energy from the sun to split the atoms of water into hydrogen and oxygen molecules. So, ang product ng light-dependent phase is oxygen. Kaya mayroon tayong oxygen in the light reaction. Kaya meron din tayong reduced nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate na product ng light reaction. It's because yung hydrogen na galing sa water is kukunin ng NADP+. Basically, yung original form nito is NADP+ lang siya. Pag nakuha na yung electron from hydrogen, kaya naging NADPH na siya. So, yung water in-split into oxygen and then hydrogen molecules. So, in the light-dependent phase, meron tayong electron transport chain na mangyayari. So, the final electron acceptor, which is the hydrogen in this electron transport chain, is the NADP+. Kaya naging NADPH siya. Kasi inaccept na yung electron from the molecule of water. So, in the dark reaction or the light independent yan ha, hindi yan dependent. In the light independent phase or yung pinapachar ng mga pangalan, Calvin-Benson Bassham Cycle. So, it happens in the stroma of the chromosome. So, ano yung needed material? Yung needed material for the plants to do the Calvin cycle, in short, is yung mga materials na produce or yung mga products ng light reactions, which is the ATP, the NADPH, and also dito na papasok si carbon dioxide. So, ang product ng light independent phase or the light independent reaction are ADP, which is a reduced form of ATP. ATP is adenosine triphosphate. Yung ADP is adenosine diphosphate, meaning dalawa lang yung phosphate na dala niya. Si ATP tatlo. So, yung kaya naging dalawa na lang because yung pangatlong phosphate is break down to release energy to create glucose. Okay? So, ito yung equation in the light independent phase. So, si carbon dioxide is will be joined together with the ribulose biphosphate using the energy from ATP and the NADPH. Now remember, ATP and NADPH are short-lived energy storage or carrier. So hindi pwede na magsistay sila na energy storage lang sila. Kailangan nilang i-release yung energy na nasa kanila para magamit ng cell. Kaya na-reduce na sila or naging bumalik na sila sa kanilang original na form, which is the NADP plus and the ADP. Because yung energy na galing sa kanila is ginamit sa pag-fuse ng carbon dioxide at saka ng ribulose biphosphate to create a phosphoglyceric acid. And then, yung phosphoglyceric acid will be converted again into phosphoglyceraldehyde, which is a 3-carbon atom. Now, we need 2 phosphoglyceraldehyde molecules to create 1 glucose. Remember that phosphoglyceraldehyde is a 3-carbon atom and the glucose is a 6-carbon atom. So, kailangan natin ng dalawa nito to make 6-carbon atom, which is can be found in the glucose. So, if you ever wonder, sir, saan galing yung ribulose biphosphate? Si ribulose biphosphate is present already in the chloroplast. Okay? Again, si ribulose biphosphate is present already in the chloroplast. Now, let's go back to our question. Our question is, the molecule in the Calvin cycle that combines with carbon dioxide is the ribulose biphosphate. Okay? Let's go back. Yan. Combines carbon dioxide at ribulose biphosphate to create phosphoglyceric acid. So, our answer here is letter B, ribulose biphosphate. 44. The source of hydrogen atoms for the synthesis of glucose is, saan nga galing yung hydrogen? From the water or the H2O. Which of the following kinds of plants fixes carbon dioxide by way of Crassulacean Acid Metabolism? A. Oak tree, B. Grass, C. Cactus, D. Red alga. Now, ano ba yung Crassulacean Acid Metabolism? It is storing of carbon dioxide by plants during the night in their cells in a form of a chemical called malic acid. Now, let's just answer here first. So, ang answer dito is cactus. Why cactus? Because cactus are considered Crassulacean acid metabolism or CAM photosynthetic na plant. Why? It's because during the night, yung mga cactus, during the night lang sila nag-i-intake or kumukuha ng carbon dioxide from their environment. Why? It's because the natural habitat ng cactus is yung desert or yung mga maiinit na environment. Okay? So, pag nasa mainit siya na environment, meaning, mabilis yung rate ng transpiration ng plant. Ano ba yung transpiration, sir? Yung transpiration ng plant is yung movement of water inside the plant and also it exits as a vapor in the stomata of the plant. Now, if cactus will take carbon dioxide during the daylight, bibilis yung rate ng transpiration, meaning maraming malulost or maraming mawawalang tubig sa cactus if he opens its stomata. Kasi yung stomata, dyan lumalabas yung vapor or water vapor, and dyan din pumapasok si oxygen at si carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So ang ginagawa ng cactus is they close their stomata during the day. Okay? So walang papasok na carbon dioxide. At wala ring lalabas na water vapor. But during the night, which is cold na yung environment, ino-open na nila yung ino-open na nila yung stomata nila para makapagpapasok na sila ng carbon dioxide. Okay? So, during the night, walang sunlight. So, anong mangyayari sa carbon dioxide? Hindi ito magagamit in the photosynthesis. Hindi sila makaka-undergo ng light independent reaction kasi nga walang magagamit na ATP or NADH from the light reaction. So ang ginagawa ng mga CAM plants or the Crassulacean Acid Metabolism plants is kina-convert nila yung carbon dioxide into malic acid, okay, during the night. And then when the day comes, they will deconvert malic acid back to carbon dioxide para magamit na nila in the photosynthesis. Kasi during the day, mayroon ng sunlight, meaning mayroon na ring source ng ATP at saka NADPH. So that's it. Because Crassulacean acid metabolism or CAM photosynthetic plants, mostly ang gumagamit nito is yung mga plants na nasa environment na mainit. Okay? Example of that is the cactus. Pero yung cactus natin ngayon, hindi na sila nasa mainit because they are in our nasa tugkaran na nato sila, kasagaran. Kaya daghan nagatanom, daghan nagabaligya. Okay. So, but still, they prefer to use Crassulacean acid metabolism or CAM photosynthesis. Okay? By the way, yung leaves ng cactus is yung spine nila or yung tinik, that is their leaves. Pero yung stomata ng cactus are not found in their leaves but in their stem. Kaya kaya green yung stem nila kasi nandun yung stomata and then nandun din yung chlorophyll. Kaya green yung stem nila. And yung leaves nila is for protection lang, not for production of food. Okay? Number 46. Plants store glucose as blank. So, yung plants nagsustore ng glucose in a form of starch. Okay? We can have starch sa mga balanghoy, sa mga kamuti, o sa pa ng mga lagot mondira, or in their fruits. Okay? Sa fruits, meron ding starch that is where they store their glucose nga nanubra. Okay? Pag nanubra ang glucose nga ilahang ginagamit or ginaproduce from their leaves, so mo nang mangmunga na ang isa ka plant because they have stored their glucose in a form of starch. 47. In most plants, carbohydrate is transported from leaves where it is synthesized to other parts, where it is used in the form of A. Sucrose, B. Maltose, C. Fructose, D. Starch. Now, plants that does not directly use glucose. Okay? Again, plants does not directly use glucose even though they create glucose for their own food, pero kina-convert pa nila ito into sucrose para magamit nila. So, yung answer natin dito is sucrose. Yung ginagamit na sugar ng plants para sa kanilang nutrition is sucrose. It's not glucose. Okay? Sucrose is a disaccharide and glucose is a monosaccharide. Meaning, one sugar lang. Si sucrose is two types of sugar. 48. Which tissue in all vascular plants has food transport as its main function. A. Sclerenchyma, B. Phloem, C. Palisade, or D. Xylem. So, meron din tayong technique kung paano natin ma-identify ito. Pag foods, it's the phloem. Okay? Phloem for foods. In Bisaya, foods man na. So, foods man na paglitok na to. Naamoy foods dira. So, PP, phloem for foods. Nga na kasayon. Hindi mo maglibog between phloem and xylem. Phloem for foods, xylem for water. 49. How many ATP molecules are produced via oxidative phosphorylation when one molecule of glucose is degraded into carbon dioxide and water? Letter A, 4, B, 34, C, 24, D, 6. Now, ano ba yung oxidative phosphorylation? Again, it's the electron transport chain. So, during the electron transport chain or the oxidative phosphorylation, nakakaproduce ito ng 32 to 34 ATP. Number 50. Which is the 3-carbon sugar formed during the dark reaction phase of photosynthesis? A. Pigal, B. ATP, C. ADP, and D. NADPH. So in our choices, isa lang yung nagko-contain ng carbon sugar. Or yes, isa lang yung nagko-contain ng 3-carbon sugar. And it's the phosphoglyceraldehyde. We have talked about this a while ago, that phosphoglyceraldehyde or glycerol 3-phosphate contains 3-carbon sugar. So dalawang kailangan nito para makakreate tayo ng 6-carbon sugar na glucose. Okay? So